Another opening of another show. Another opening, another show in Philly, Boston, or Baltimore.
Well, hello, here we are again for another Green Room podcast. It's been a wee while, but I'm here with my partner in crime, John Walker, again. Good to see you again, John.
Yes, good to see you. Yeah, on this bright and breezy day.
Oh, you brought the good weather with you. And you've also brought a couple of guests with you, of course, who will be well known to anyone who's been associated with MADF or been associated with the Albany Players or basically anything to do with the theatre for a goodly number of years. Jan and Mike Percival. It's a husband and wife team, but you didn't. I take it you didn't start in drama together, then, Jan? No.
No.
You had separate routes into the world of treading the boards or backstage or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I started at school when I was made stage manager for the school production as a punishment, which was an interesting introduction. But thereafter, every year I remained as stage manager.
What about you, Jan?
Well, I came into it through music, and then I went to Guildhall to do opera, and then I came back, and that's when I met up with Mike when I came back. I didn't realise that my parents knew his parents.
Ah.
And
at the time, I had very long hair and a motorbike, and if I hadn't been able to point out that they knew my mum and dad, I don't think I would have been acceptable to them. In fact, Jan's mum sang at my parents' wedding.
Yes, Molly. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I've forgotten. Of course, you did the singing for a long time, but
Yes.
such a long time. And did you ever do it professionally? I can't
a
recall.
little bit,
You
yes.
did, yeah.
But then I came home.
Yeah, and then sort of came back here, and then you still carried on singing for a long time.
Yes.
Then, so and what sort of brought you from the singing into the drama? Was it just mixing with that crowd?
Mixing with that crowd. I liked going to see the one-act plays. We didn't do the one-act plays.
No, it was the Easter Festival.
Easter Festival, and I liked that very much. And I actually got my mother down there. She wasn't going to come. She had to come take most of the furniture from her sitting room, so she didn't have a lot of furniture. So she came down and she thoroughly enjoyed it and she said, "I've got to come back." And I said, "Yes, you have."
Of course, both your parents were originally
Yes.
in drama with the Northern Arts Dramatic Players.
And that was
in
down in
Ramsey.
Ramsey.
Ah, yes, I've forgotten them. You know them, John?
No, not for me. Mine's all the southern end. It's amazing all the different groups that you have over the years. I mean, I remember if you go back far enough that if you weren't part of one group, then you never dream of going to audition for someone else.
That was definitely a no-no.
No, even if it's one just round the corner saying, "Oh, well, we need someone to help out on this production." No, excommunication.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I was very happy to help out any of the groups who actually asked me to help them. I was associated with the Albany Theatre Group, and prior to that the Raven Players up in Ramsey. But as a stage manager, I just enjoyed stage managing. So any group that asked me, including the musical societies, I went along quite happily.
Now it's interesting because most of the people we've had on the podcast so far are people who've been on the stage, whereas both of your role is more behind the stage and
Not me to start with.
Well, yes, but as in, but doing particularly with the Easter Festival, and that's what would be great to hear your memories of the Easter Festival over the years and how it's changed, and as we come into the 75th year of MADF next year, how you think that the festival has changed over that time for good or for bad, and what you and particularly behind the scenes, because we haven't had much of that in our podcast so
Absolutely.
far.
I think the biggest change has to be the fact that we've got the one-act festival and the Easter Festival of full-length plays now combined into one.
I suggested that a long time ago, and it was just, no, you can't do that. And that was a long, long time ago. They said it have to be 2 weeks. We couldn't do it in 1 week. I said, yes, we could.
Yeah,
They
and
were
we now
right.
do.
Yes.
I think the other changes involve the fact that an awful lot of the groups from the UK can't afford to come over anymore. They can't afford the time or the transport. So many of the groups that we became very, very friendly with have either disbanded or they still exist, but they put on perhaps one small performance a year.
And they can't afford to come over.
Exactly.
I think the best thing was one of the groups, what was the one that used to come over a lot.
Group theatre?
Group theatre. They came over and I would always pick them up or take them down or get what they wanted. And we got a phone call, Jan, we've missed the boat.
Oh.
And they ended up, they came into the drawing room and we put lots of blankets.
There were 17 of them.
And we managed to do them all.
The night before, the hotel they were in, if they wanted the bar kept open, the bar stayed open 24 hours.
That's where they phoned from.
Yeah.
And they
missed
phoned
the
from
boat.
there because they were still in the bar.
And they'd missed the boat.
And they'd missed the boat, the morning boat. So they were, by the time they got to us, they were all fairly well inebriated.
refreshed.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And it was great. We got in all sorts of takeaway, Chinese food, Indian food, all sorts. It was a party. It really was.
Do you remember what the first Easter Festival production that you were involved in was?
Yes, I do. I got taken along to see Exit the King, which actually won. I can't remember what year that was, early 70s, I think.
Yeah.
And quite frankly,
That was the
I
first
would have,
one that Mum came to see. And I said, they all get better.
quite frankly, I would have preferred to watch paint dry. It was awful, and it won.
Yeah.
My
No
initial
accounting
reaction
for taste
was,
in certain.
well, if this is the one that wins, what are the rest like? But I got dragged backstage after that. John Wright's the lawyer's father. He was the stage manager for MADF at the time. Wonderful man. He didn't suffer fools gladly, and he was very proud of his electric screwdriver, quite a noisy electric screwdriver, and he insisted that while the adjudicator was doing his final adjudication on the stage, George would start taking the set apart. We sort of had to drag him to the back of the stage and put a cigarette in his mouth. He was a wonderful man. He was a very, very good stage manager, got to admit it.
He didn't like women backstage. And he said, who are you? And I said,
No, that wasn't George.
Oh, who was it?
That was stage manager for the Gaiety. Oh, goodness. His name will come to me. But
Tony Mac?
Tony McAvoy. Taught me a lot. I started at the Gaiety when I was 16. And Tony, he always had a cigarette in his mouth.
Always.
And the ash never fell off it. So no matter how far down he smoked it, the ash was the full length of the cigarette. How he did that, I have never been able to understand.
Incredible balance.
Oh, total. He used to sleep in the theatre.
Yes.
One of the two little offices backstage, he actually had a bed in.
It's amazing, all of the characters. I think we found when we spoke to Michael Lee, still the characters from the years gone by that they're remembered in such a fun way, and that's part of what we're doing this podcast series is to go back through the history of MADF, the history of the theatre. It's a fantastic theatre, incredible theatre.
Well,
It's beautiful.
And that the Easter Festival in particular, getting the opportunity to act on that stage and by merging the festivals,
Yes.
that comes out.
It's given the one-act groups
I think we found out
a
who I
wonderful opportunity.
But when he found out who I was, he said, who are you? And I said, my name was Janice Tier. Any relationship to
Eric.
Tier? And I said, yes. I said, he's
my
my
father.
father. I remember him as a dame. I said, no, you've got that wrong. I remember him as a dame. And then I asked my dad, and yes. And he said, oh, I was in that as well. It was so much better when I was off the stage. And then my dad went on to be a lawyer.
Yes.
It's an interesting point, though, just sort of coming up there in conversation, really, whether the standard has actually got better. You were saying, Mike, the first one you went to see, it was pretty ropey. I have to say now, a lot of the plays, I think,
So incredibly slick.
yeah,
Last
very
couple of
slick.
years.
And it
Yes.
seems to me the
Yeah.
standard has improved dramatically.
I
over the years.
can't believe that people will happily travel down to London to see a production because the amateur productions on the Isle of Man are rubbish. They're not. The amateur productions over here are to a very high professional standard. And there's so many people who just don't realise that. And I wish they did. They're missing so much.
It's definitely something with the Easter Festival that the quality, I think it's those people learn as the years go on. There have been certain groups coming back. I remember there's one group, in the first time they came over, it was an okay production, but clearly they weren't as experienced, but it was the opportunity to act on the
Yes.
stage. They honed their craft, went away, and a year or two later came back and did a different production. And it was streets ahead, and it was one of the best ones. And I think it wasn't going to win, but I think because there was a couple of outstanding productions that year.
Yeah.
But the quality has it's
it's
astonishing.
improved dramatically.
I used to like it years back when people would bring them in and I would be backstage waiting for them, and their stage when they actually saw it was amazing.
Oh,
They're terrified. Do we have to go here? I said, this is where you perform. Just go on and see what it's like. I can't do this. I can't. Yes, you can.
Yeah, I always love the reaction of people. First time they step out onto the Gaiety stage, no set, no audience, just the tabs out, and they look at the body of the Kirk, and their reactions are just wonderful to watch. The face, the mouths drop open, and they some of the words they use to describe what they're seeing, I couldn't possibly repeat on radio.
Are there particular groups that you have very fond memories of working with, or particular productions that you remember?
Group theatre from London. We became almost members of their family. They were just the East End of London. Absolutely lovely people. A spade was a spade.
But Mike, when we went down to see them and you brought the car.
Oh, yes.
And you left the keys in it.
Yeah, I left the key. I had a very nice Astra GTE. Gone down to London to visit them. Left the keys in the car, parked it outside. Well, I'm from the Isle of Man. Of course I'll leave the keys in the car. And there was a knock on the door, and this chap who must have been about 6'6" tall and about 5 feet across the shoulders, wearing a very shiny suit, said, "These are your keys." And I said, "Yes, they are." And he said, "Don't leave them in the car, son. It's not safe around here." And off he went. And I asked Bernard Thomas, who was Bernard and Joyce were the founders, if you like. I said, "Who was that?" "You really don't want to know." And I said, "Why not? Is he a crook or something?" "Yes, he's one of the Crays top guys." I said, "How come he gave the keys back instead of just taking the car away and selling it?" And Bernard said, "It's because they know us." And it was just purely an East End thing. But they were great. Tudor players, Manchester, they were lovely. There were so many. We became friends with them all.
Can't remember who they were from Ireland.
Martello.
Oh, Martello, they were wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, slightly off the wall. Produced some very interesting plays.
Were they from Ireland or?
Yes,
they were
from Ireland.
From Ireland.
Martello is a tower. It used to be a watchtower. And there was a watchtower near where they started, so they called themselves Martello Players. But they produced some very interesting plays, usually something with a completely off-the-wall slant to it, often by Irish playwrights. And quite a few of the audience had great difficulty understanding what they were saying.
We had no problem.
No, we were fine. I don't know why. They were great. Like I said, there were so many who were wonderful.
Would you say there's one production that would stand out for you in the years that you were involved with? Obviously, if you were backstage, one of the interesting things, and people might not know about the Easter Festival, is that if you're stage managing or you're behind the scenes, you will do all the shows, and that the groups will send through their requirements in advance, and as you say, you try and find bits, and there's stuff. I mean, our garage at home is full of all sorts of random bits. There's a sofa with 3 wheels on it that was used one year. I've been trying to persuade powers that be to get rid of it for the last couple of years, but it was still there, and it might come in use at some point. But
when we lived on Quarterbridge Road, we had a very, very large garage at the back, and we did have an awful lot in there, an awful lot. But when we moved, we had to get it all out, and it just went. Because we did ask people, could they take it? No. So
yes, the stage manager, part of the job was to source all the necessary props, to get hold of a van to pick them up and then take them back to wherever you'd borrowed them from, to
doesn't happen now.
Build the set. Now the groups would provide whatever bodies they could afford to bring over, but generally speaking, we would have a team of backstage workers who would build the sets, who would strike the set afterwards. It was down to us to put that together for them. It was great. It worked. It was a bit of a surprise to some of the teams when they went to other festivals to discover that there wasn't a team. And they couldn't get over the fact that in the Isle of Man, we would look after them.
And
still do.
What actually drew you into that side, as John was saying? Because it is, it's teamwork, isn't it? A good production.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good the actors and actresses are. If you haven't got a good backstage team, it's going to be rubbish, or it's not going to happen at all. One of the two.
I like this man.
And it's a case. Well, that's the way. That's always the way I thought it works. It's got to be a team effort, one way or another. And I've always thought, if you're on stage, at least you get the limelight and thing. Whereas, as you were saying there, backstage, you get all the graft. And
you get none of the thanks.
You get none of the thanks, and it's sort of what drew you to that
Actually,
side?
when you go to when we go to the drinks afterwards, yes, he does get thanked with an awful lot of alcohol.
Keep you in stock for a few months.
I got into the backstage work, as I said, at school, and enjoyed it immensely. Then went at the age of 16. I was backstage at the Gaiety, and I cannot remember for the life of me how I got dragged in there. So I'm still sort of on a casually employed basis by the Gaiety.
You must have been there
I'm
for
the longest
quite a few
serving
years.
person. Yeah. I've been there over 50 years
Good
now.
Lord. You should medal.
That'd be nice. But with the Raven players, who used to put a pantomime on at the Gaiety every year, this was in the days before big professional groups started doing pantomimes, and I would always be in the pantomime, usually as the idiot lead role. So you'd have the prince, you'd have the princess, you'd have the dame, and there was always the dame's son or the dame's assistant who would fall over to pratfalls, sing a dreadfully out-of-tune song. I'm really good at singing out of tune.
Very, very good.
Absolutely.
In church, I won't stand next to him because it's so bad.
Yeah. But that's how I basically started off, because other groups would then say, having seen the fact that I was working backstage as well as on stage, "Oh, Mike, can you give us a hand?" Fine. Yeah. So I then enjoyed being backstage more than I enjoyed being on stage. Felt I was contributing more to the whatever group or whatever production.
I
or
know
the
when we
Easter
were doing a
Festival.
pantomime and you were in it and I was Flaming Princess, and I had to stand right at the back of the stage and sing. And they said, "Jen, we won't be able to hear you." And I said, "Just wait."
They could hear her.
Yeah.
And I had
You
my
don't need
back,
Auntie
I
Jean at
just
the back
had,
saying,
I just had
"Speak
the
up."
back.
No.
And I was singing, it was a horrible thing. And I sang it, I hate it. And it was very, very loud. And "Okay, Jan, you don't have to sing loud." I said, "Thank you." But that it's nothing to do with the one act. Sorry.
No. No, Easter Festival. I've always been backstage for the Easter Festival. I've never been on stage for any of the productions in it.
By accident.
I did offer to at one point.
I thought it was an accident you had to go on.
Yeah, Bernard had.
Right. I had to stop the play.
I think he had a stroke
A mini stroke.
halfway through the production. In fact, at the interval. So I offered to go on with his script and read the part in, but they decided no, they would stop there and then.
And I had to go out and say.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Yeah, does happen.
Oh yeah.
But then Joe Swan got cross because he was there and we should have just asked him.
Yes.
And he was our doctor.
Yeah.
So he got cross with us because we didn't call him.
He was always at the theatre, and his widow Sue
Still
Swan
comes.
comes every year, Easter Festival.
If she can.
Yeah.
That's if Michael Lees can bring her.
Yes, that's right.
So many characters.
Yeah,
from the years.
absolutely. There's too many to name, but they all. The more off the wall they were, the more we liked them.
Yeah.
There's a definite camaraderie. I think that's possibly what we find over the years is that groups will change, and there's no, as much as a society is only as strong as the collective will of the individuals that you have, and they merge and move around. And now, I don't think that I would say that there was a particular society I'm belong to more than any other, possibly service players, but you get involved in so many different productions.
I think that's wonderful. I really approve of that. It's particularly noticeable with the large musical societies on the island. It used to be, if you were a member of the choral, you could not possibly go along with any of the other.
right.
Oh
I got
dear
told
me,
off for that.
you'd be thrown out. Now
I left.
it's open. Yes, you did. I stage managed for all of those as
Yeah.
well.
I think perhaps it's overlooked a little bit if you're going to do stage manager.
Yes.
They'll forgive you if you do more than one.
That's right.
Production.
Well, I'm glad to say that there are some seriously good stage managers around now, some of whom started out backstage at the age of about 5 or 6 helping with props. And I watched them grow into, well, in one case anyway, a professional stage manager. And that's been a joy. They started out backstage, Easter Festival, helping with props, getting under people's feet. But that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Emma, our daughter, she's stage manager.
Yes, Emma stage managed. She went away to college and trained professionally. On a number of occasions, she's stage managed the Easter Festival. A couple of times I've been her assistant, and I was absolutely delighted to be her assistant. That was
But Mike,
absolutely
she got
Was
Ronan.
she
wonderful.
delighted to have you as her assistant?
Yes, I'm glad to say she was,
that's good.
because
I did say keep your mouth shut.
yes, but on occasion she would ask, "How do I do this?" And thankfully, I was able to say, "Right, this way, that way."
But when she brought Ronan down, that's her son,
That's her. Yes,
and he helped. He was very funny.
he was. We were just clearing something backstage.
You can't
and
do this
he's
anymore 'cause they're too young.
6-year-old lad, and he just helped. He just immediately rolled up his sleeves, in effect, and started
lights.
helping
Wasn't it
and
lights
doing
or something?
exactly what he was asked to do, not getting in the way. And I thought, there's another generation.
Yeah.
Our granddaughter, who lives across, is now training in.
Amelia. Millie.
She's at college. She's doing stage production and event production.
Wow.
That's at Wakefield.
Yeah.
So she's heavily into the theatre. Both our daughters got heavily. Well, they had no choice really, did they? From the age of 2 weeks old, they were in a dressing room.
Was
at
that
the
Emma?
Gaiety. Emma, at 2 weeks old, ended up on stage because the production we were working on, they had somebody was supposed to have a baby, and they had a doll which didn't look like a baby at all. We said, "You don't want one of those. You want one of these." And so
That was
Emma was
Emma.
on the stage. at the
I
age
think
of
she
2
probably
weeks.
wins the award then for the earliest acting credit.
But then Erica will say, I was on first. I don't remember that one.
No, well, she was on first because you were
Oh, I was
pregnant,
pregnant.
with her in a production, so she was on stage.
Yeah.
I suppose that counts. Yeah.
Well,
Don't see why not.
So one of the things we've been asked all of our guests is there one production that you have done or been involved in that was your favourite, and is there one that you would like to do again if it's not the same one, or if it is the same one?
right. For me, I think the production I was on stage for was The Normal Heart, which was directed by Michael Lees, and it was Dramatis Personae. It was set in New York at the onset of AIDS, so it wasn't a comedy by any means, but I had the only comedy part in the entire production. That was an absolutely tremendous production. You could let yourself go on that because I had to play a Texan queen, and the being able to get your head round going that far over the top was absolutely liberating. It was wonderful. Jan?
Steel Magnolias.
Yeah.
I
Which
love
was,
Steel Magnolias.
that was on at the same time as The Normal Heart. So we were both doing American accents.
Different accents, though.
But from different parts of the States. So it was very confusing in the
Yeah.
house.
That was good. And I
Yes.
know that Group Theatre, two of them came over to see that. And it was a knock on the backstage door, and they let them in and said, Jan, there's somebody here to see it. I was overwhelmed. Wish we had you in ours because you did it so much better. And to hear that from Group Theatre, that was
Yeah, that
wonderful,
was,
absolutely wonderful.
Lovely.
Praise indeed.
I mean, one of the things we're trying to next year, I know, with the anniversary, is trying to get as many groups from the history of the Easter Festival to come back and be involved again. Is there anyone you think that you would welcome to have back that haven't been over for a number of years?
Group Theatre, but they only
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
one-act plays now.
Yes, almost any of them, to be honest. There were a couple who didn't endear themselves, should we say, to people. They have one production of A Man for All Seasons. The backstage crew decided it should be called A Man for All Evenings because he insisted on a lighting plot, and the theatre, Alex, the theatre lighting man, said, "Are you sure this is very dim and dark?" "No, that's exactly what I want." And Alex said, "You realise you've set the lights too low, the focus of them too low." No, that's exactly what I want." Well, during the production, people could hardly see them on stage. They were lit from the neck downwards, so the faces were in complete darkness. And at the end of the production, when this was pointed out to them, he blamed the theatre staff, he blamed the MADF crew, he blamed everybody. Now, I'm not going to say what group it was, but I prefer they didn't come back.
Yeah.
But all the others...
Well, that's part of the story, isn't it? I mean, that's what makes the competition, makes the festival itself. Is you get these stories and productions, particular ones. I mean, the one that stands out for me was it was only a few years ago, doing Importance of Being Earnest, coming up from the trap, silk boxer shorts. There's always those moments that then stick in your mind, and then Constellations, another production that was done as well. I'd never seen the play, and it's actually been on at the National with a series of different actors, so that the whole run was then different pairings through. How you would learn the lines for something like that is absolutely unbelievable.
I hold my hands up to say that I think the reason I stayed backstage was because learning lines is not my forte.
But when I was in Steel Magnolias, everybody thought I'd have the lines in the rollers. Did I thump? No.
Little cute little prompts everywhere, but there weren't.
There weren't.
Which makes me think, actually, again, talking about characters and characters close to home, and certainly people associated with MADF, and that lady we mentioned just before we started chatting was Daphne Clark.
Daphne Clark, yes.
And I think of Daphne, then I always think of the Albany Theatre Group,
yes.
Daphne, with two other great characters, Dorothy Cannon and Renée Savage.
Yes.
And I think the three of us here all certainly did several
Renée
plays
was
there,
chairman first.
which were great fun and full of characters and full of interesting incidents, it has to be said.
That's very true, yes.
It's I always remember doing. I think it was might have been the first one. It was Arsenic and Old Lace, and as per it was. I remember the first night, the very crucial piece of stage equipment, i.e., the window box in which the bodies were hidden. There was a case of the paint was still wet. Be careful how you lift the lid up, because the paint was still wet on the top.
That's right.
And wonderful time. And Daphne, again, long associated with MADF, of course,
yes.
and sort of was a woman who was absolutely wonderful, great actress, very hard worker, very dedicated, very talented. Woe betide you if you got on the wrong side of her.
But Daphne always said she couldn't act.
Oh,
Yeah,
Daphne,
she could.
I remember Daphne dying in one production, and it was I die, clonk. And then a couple of seconds later, I'm dead, I'm dying. She must have kept it going for about 3 minutes. It was absolutely hysterically funny to the audience, but not necessarily to anyone on stage with her.
Although that was where it goes.
She directed in the One Act Festival one year, the first year of the One Act Festival. She directed a play and starred in a play called Big Cats.
Right, that was good.
You were in it,
I
was
Big
in
Cats.
it, and Daphne was in it.
There was only 3 of us.
The cat in question was a caterpillar. They were knocking down a section of Liverpool, and this was a lady with her husband who would not move out of the house. It was the last house standing in about 3 or 4 acres of rubble, and it transpired. I was playing the husband, and I was obviously quite a bit younger than Daphne, which was noticeable. And it transpired that the husband had actually died 20 years earlier, and she was talking to the ghost. So that was the first time I'd ever played a ghost, which was interesting.
We didn't have an adjudicator at all because we was just starting off, and we had my uncle,
Martin Farragher,
and
also well known to the dramatic circles on the island.
And he knew who was going to win, but he couldn't choose me because I was his niece, so he told
He chose Howard and Chris, who were in a different production.
I always liked Uncle Martin.
We thought, hang on, if he can't choose us because we're relatives, how come he's chosen Chris and H? Because they're relatives.
Yeah.
But everybody knew that I was his niece.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Some wonderful stories, wonderful memories, and I'm sure we could talk all evening on this. There's so many things. You still enjoy drama, though, with the pair of you? You still go and see drama when you can? Do you still
Absolutely.
catch up?
I was actually in a production by the Service Players quite recently.
There you go.
As a prison warder.
Yep. Witness for the prosecution.
I had 2 lines, and they cut one of my lines. I was very
50%
disappointed.
rate.
They obviously knew my acting abilities.
You have to come back for another one then. Get the other
Well,
line.
you-
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. I enjoyed being on stage again, actually. So
It does get in the blood, doesn't it?
It does.
It's
Oh,
a
yes.
Just to
strange
come back
thing.
to is there a production that you would want to do again?
Big Cats.
Yes, Big Cats.
Mm.
That was
That was
because Daphne directed it, and Daphne it was very
was
very
in it.
good.
But it was a cracking play. It really was well written.
Yeah.
Daphne's direction was superb, but the lines in it were just so clever. So yes, I'd like to do that again.
I
Well-
did have it, but since we've moved from Quarterbridge, I haven't got them anymore.
No, it's well. Eventually, things disappear. You can't keep
Yes.
everything forever, can you? I know I've got a burgeoning section of old scripts, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, can I keep all these forever? I don't know.
Just
I don't
in
know.
case.
Yeah,
Yes.
just in case.
I find the hardest is getting rid of my music.
Yes.
I find it terribly difficult getting rid of my music, and I have kept most of it, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an awful lot, but I haven't got an awful lot now.
No.
The ones I want, I've got.
That's the thing, you've got to thin it down to the
Yes.
essential ones, haven't you? I think that's often the way. Listen, lovely to talking to everyone. Jan, Mike, thanks ever so much for joining us in the Green Room podcast today. Been a great pleasure talking to you, sharing a few memories and some great characters. And no doubt John and I will meet up in the next episode. I don't know who's coming up next, but it's bound to be someone interesting.
Of course.
Lovely. Thank you, Honourable. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, H.